The Speaker will give some short ruling on the points of order that were raised by several members this morning. Thereafter, you will have the division bell rung to call you to order for the vote. The House Business Committee has directed that voting will be by electronic process. Those of you who may not have your cards will be required to register with the clerks at the table so that everybody is voted. After the vote is cast and the results announced to the House, then we'll open to a few members who may wish to comment on the nominee that has been processed through the House. So call out order number 12.
Order number 12, voting on the nomination of Professor Kithure Kindiki, EGH, to fill the vacancy in the office of the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya.
Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members, I have a communication to make on the nomination of Professor Kithure Kindiki, EGH, to fill the vacancy in the office of the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. Honorable members, you will recall that earlier this morning at the commencement of the sitting, I notified the House of the receipt of a message from His Excellency the President nominating Professor Kithure Kindiki, EGH, to fill the vacancy in the office of the Deputy President pursuant to Article 149 of the Constitution. You will further recall, Mutuse, take your seat. Gachagua, take a seat. Honorable members, you may further recall that upon notification of the House, several members rose in their places and raised a number of issues for my guidance. The members who spoke included Honorable Robert Bukose, Honorable Mboka Milemba, Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe, Honorable Samuel Chepkonga, Honorable Jane Gakiri, Honorable Wanami Wamboka, and others. In this regard, I convened a meeting of the House Business Committee for the purpose of deliberating on the next steps to be taken by the House on this matter and guiding the House on the issues raised by the members. Honorable members, I have distilled the issues raised by the members as follows. 1, whether Article 149(1) of the Constitution envisages an approval process in the manner contemplated by the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act, Cap 7F. 2, whether the House shall conduct public participation in voting on the nomination under Article 149(1) of the Constitution. 3, whether the members shall be required to debate on the nomination under Article 149(1) of the Constitution. And 4, the timelines envisaged under Article 149(1) of the Constitution. And 5, the threshold for voting on the nomination under Article 149(1) of the Constitution. Honorable members, permit me to examine each of the issues that have been raised. The first, on whether Article 149(1) of the Constitution envisages an approval process in the manner contemplated by the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act. It's noteworthy that the Article 149(1) of the Constitution provides as follows, and I quote, within 14 days after vacancy in the office of the Deputy President arises, the President shall nominate a person to fill the vacancy and the National Assembly shall vote on the nomination within 60 days after receiving it. From a reading of Article 149(1) of the Constitution, it's expressly provided that the National Assembly shall vote on the nomination within 60 days after receiving it. The drafters of the Constitution distinguish the language used in Article 149(1) of the Constitution by expressly providing that the House is required to vote and not approve the nomination. Indeed, this is to be distinguished from the provisions of Article 132(4) of the Constitution, which provides that the President shall nominate and, with the approval of the National Assembly, appoint and may dismiss the Cabinet Secretaries in accordance with Article 152, the Attorney General in accordance with Article 156, the Secretary of the Cabinet in accordance with Article 154, Principal Secretaries in accordance with Article 155, and High Commissioners, Ambassadors, and Diplomatic and Consular Representatives. Members of the bar, take the nearest seats. Honourable members, in this regard, for all the state officers that I have just highlighted, the House is required to approve their nomination by the President. However, in respect to the Deputy President, Article 149(1) of the Constitution expressly provides that the House is required to vote on the nomination. It is noteworthy that the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act applies where an appointment under the Constitution or any other law requires an approval of the House. Consequently, noting Article 149(1) of the Constitution requires the House to take a vote on the nomination, the approval process envisaged under the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act does not apply in this case. The House will therefore adopt the precedent it has set on this matter, and this settles that point. Honourable members, the second issue was whether the House shall conduct public participation in voting on the nomination under Article 149(1) of the Constitution. As stated earlier, Article 149(1) of the Constitution requires the House to take a vote on the nomination of Professor Kithure Kindiki EGH to fill the vacancy in the office of the Deputy President, which is essentially an election. Honourable members, you will recall that the practice of the House, whenever it is confronted with an obligation to vote on the matter as relates to an election, the instances include election of the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, under Articles 106 of the Constitution, the members of the East African Legislative Assembly and the Pan-African Parliament, for which the House is required to vote on nominations of members to hold such positions. The practice of the House in these instances is that the House has always proceeded directly to vote without public participation. To this end, to the extent that Article 149(1) of the Constitution contemplates the House to vote upon receiving the nomination, the requirement for public participation is not applicable in this case. This settles the second issue. Honourable members, on the third issue relating to whether members shall be allowed to debate on the nomination, is noteworthy that having determined the vote contemplated under Article 149(1) of the Constitution is an election, no debate arises on a matter of election. Indeed, you will recall that in the case of the election of a Speaker of this House and the members of the East African Legislative Assembly, no debate arises. This settles that third issue. The fourth issue, honourable members, is the issue on timelines envisaged under Article 149(1) of the Constitution. You'll observe that the Article 149 of the Constitution defines the period within which the President is required to nominate a person to fill the vacancy in the office of the President, office of the Deputy President, which is within 14 days after vacancy in the office of the Deputy President arises. The National Assembly is then required to vote on the nomination within 60 days after receiving it. Honourable members, from the foregoing, Article 149(1) of the Constitution defines the maximum period within which the President and the National Assembly are required to act. To this end, the President can nominate a person to fill the vacancy for the first day, from the first day of the vacancy arises up to the 14th day. On its part, the National Assembly is required to vote on any day from the first day it receives a nomination up to the 60th day after receipt of the nomination. Consequently, the nomination of Professor Kithure Kindiki, EGH, and the vote the House is required to take today on the nomination is within the constitutional timeline provided for in Article 149(1) of the Constitution. This settles that fourth issue. The fifth and final issue that was raised was guidance on the threshold for voting under Article 149 of the Constitution. It is noteworthy that Article 149(1) of the Constitution has not defined or provided for the threshold for voting for the nomination of a person to fill the vacancy of the office of the Deputy President. Article 122(1) of the Constitution provides that, except as otherwise provided in the Constitution, any question proposed for decision in either House of Parliament shall be determined by a majority of the members in that House present and voting. Consequently, the threshold for voting on the nomination of Professor Kithure Kindiki, EGH, is a majority of the members in this House present and voting, as provided for in Article 122(1) of the Constitution. That final issue is also settled. Honourable members, in summary, therefore, I wish to guide the House as follows. 1, that Article 149 of the Constitution requires the House to take a vote on the nomination of Professor Kithure Kindiki, EGH, to fill the vacancy in the office of the Deputy President. 2, and in this regard, the House will be guided by its previous precedents whenever it's called upon to take a vote on a matter as relates to the election of the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, and members of IALA and Pan-African Parliament. 3, that no debate arises on a matter that the House is required to take a vote. 4, that the nomination of Professor Kithure Kindiki, EGH, and the vote the House is required to take on the nomination is within the constitutional timeline provided for in Article 149(1) of the Constitution. 5, that the House Business Committee has resolved that the vote contemplated under Article 149(1) of the Constitution be taken today during this sitting of the House. 6, that the threshold for voting on the nomination of Professor Kithure Kindiki, EGH, is a majority of the members in the House present and voting as provided for in Article 122(1) of the Constitution. The House is therefore accordingly guided and may now proceed to take the vote. Clerk, can you ring the division bell for 5 minutes? Yes, Wanjala. Wanjala?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. As you have rightly said,